welcome to Learn to Live Stress-Free. This is Christine Wright with Dr. Robert Wright Jr., your go-to wellness coaches of StressFreeNow.info. Our featured guest today is Shelby Stanger. Shelby has sandboarded down desolate dunes in South Africa, stand-up paddled a remote portion of the Amazon River, spent a summer reporting about a traveling punk rock concert, and interviewed countless CEOs, entrepreneurs, and athletes on assignment. Her journalism work has appeared everywhere from Outside Magazine to CNN.com, Self, ESPNW, Surfer, and more. Aside from her work in journalism, Shelby's also worked with companies like Nike, Vans, Body Glove, and Prana, who have hired Shelby to help them tell their stories better, gaining them more customers, fans, and sales. Over the years, Shelby's learned how much a little adventure can cure. She's also become an expert at taking her own wild ideas and turning them into reality, as well as empowering others to live out their passions. Wild Ideas Worth Living podcast is her latest project. Shelby, we're so glad that you could join us today. Welcome.
Well, thank you, Christine and Bob. I'm really excited to be on the show with you, and you have a great interview voice. I just have to tell you.
Thank you.
Welcome, Shelby. And audience, you are in for a wild ride with Shelby Stanger. We are thrilled to have her coming in all the way from California, and she is going to share a wild ride that is going to simultaneously thrill you and soothe you. And so, Shelby, I just want to say we are thrilled to have you, and let's rock and roll on this podcast. So
all right, let's rock and roll. I'm excited.
Yeah. So, Shelby, tell our audience your story and your journey, a little bit of how you came to have the courage to quit your corporate job and to pursue your dream life of adventure, being able to travel and write as a professional journalist. You know, there are many people who are sitting at their desk right now listening to this, and they're like, oh, my gosh, if I could be doing almost anything else. And sometimes when I walk into office, I see a person with glazed over eyes, and I say, where are you? And they say, oh, I'm in the Maldives or maybe the Seychelles or in Hawaii. So give us please share your heartfelt story with us.
Yeah, I think a lot of people struggle with wanting to quit their job, and they're not sure how. And what was really hard for me is I had an amazing job. I was running international marketing at Vans, the shoe company, the skateboard shoe company. And I worked with great people. I loved what I was doing, but I wanted to be a writer. I had started writing when I was really young and learned the power of the pen and how journalism could be so transformative. And I loved my job. I loved my paycheck. I loved the steady income. So quitting really made absolutely zero sense on paper at the time. I did a pro-con list, and it didn't add up. So it took me about 2 years to get up the courage to quit and become a journalist full-time. And I didn't just do it. I started freelancing late at night, in the morning, but I didn't want to just write before 9 and after 6 p.m. I wanted to try and make writing my full-time gig, and I wanted to have to earn every dollar I made, which now I'm like, why did I do that? But, freelance life isn't easy. I struggled. I even got completely depressed in making the decision to quit my job. I think when we're in this state of flux and we don't know what we're going to do and we want to do something but we don't do it, that's a really hard place to be. So some people, drink or do drugs. I had a mom who was a drug and alcohol prevention program counselor and social worker, so I never did that. But I did silly things because I didn't know how to quit my job. Eventually, it just got to the point where I was sick of being sad and not doing what I really wanted to do. So at the height of the recession, when it made absolutely zero sense to quit my job, I gave notice, and I had lined things up. So I started freelancing on the side, and I said, okay, if I land a story in this one magazine, I know that after getting a story in that one magazine, I'll be able to pitch other magazines because that will give me credibility. So the day I decided to actually quit my job, I was scared to death. But as soon as I told my boss and gave him notice, I literally got a call a few hours later. I'd been putting I putting the motions in place to leap. And I got a call to go to Indonesia and to write about these surfers surfing these giant waves in Indonesia. So it's very cliche. They say the universe has a way of aligning to work itself out and working with you when you make the decision to leap. But for me, I was completely terrified. Actually, someone gave me this quote. It was actually on an actual piece of art. They gave it to me off their wall, and they said, Shelby, you need this. And it was a quote by Martin Luther King that said, faith is knowing when to take the first step, even if you can't see the whole staircase. So I had no idea how I was going to make my next paycheck. I didn't know if the journalism thing was really going to work out. I just knew I wasn't happy. I wanted to do something else. I felt really guilty and entitled, a product of my generation X, Y, millennial generation, whatever I am. I was born in the 80s. So quitting was hard, but when I did it, I don't know, there was just this giant sense of freedom. And I remember like leaving my boss's office and blasting, it sounds so cheesy, but I was blasting Tom Petty music and just so excited about the prospects that lie ahead. And I wanted every day to be an adventure. I didn't want to know what I was going to do every day. So that's a long answer to your question, but really it was a leap of faith, a lot of courage, and I had to fight depression, which was really hard, and I ended up getting help for it at the same time. And all of these things together allowed me to have the courage to quit my job. I think one other thing I was doing was on the side of my real job, I was interviewing people, and I was interviewing athletes who were doing these inspirational things like paddling across the Catalina Channel, running these crazy marathons, sailing to desolate destinations. And in interviewing them and listening to their stories, I started to have the courage on my own to do my own thing.
Wow, Shelby, your answer is so amazing that you actually already answered the next question I was going to ask, which had to do with how did you handle the anxiety that comes up from quitting a job where you have a steady paycheck to not, waking up every day and you're unemployed. So I think you described that pretty well.
I don't know. I don't think you ever get used to that. I mean, you do, but I think what's really important is when you do quit your job and you go out on your own, you just have to know you're running your own business. So I want to defy the myth that it's easy. It definitely takes a lot of work. When you run your own business, I'm sure you guys know this, you wear every hat. You're the salesperson, you're pitching stories, you're managing them, you're controlling, you're basically negotiating how much you're going to get paid. You're the web technician of your own website if it breaks down. You're the IT person. You're your bookkeeper. You have to collect bills. You have to make sure people pay you. You're your own tax accountant. I think the biggest thing is when you quit your job, you have to take full responsibility of everything you do. There's no blaming someone down the hall in the office or a coworker if you screw up, and you have to also be creative while you're doing all of this. So it takes a ton of discipline. And I think I got really lucky early on. I had two awesome gigs. One, I got this assignment to go to Indonesia, and then immediately I got asked to do a commercial and got paid like easy money to just show up and do a commercial. So I thought it was going to be easy, and then after that, it wasn't. It was hard. I got rejected a ton, and eventually I learned how to not get rejected so much. But I think when you ask about how you deal with the anxiety that can arise from not having a steady paycheck, I think you just have to diversify one, work really hard on different things. So I wasn't only writing, I was teaching surf lessons and just trying to do some other things so I always had a steady stream of income. And then when you have no schedule, you go from, when you go to an office and you pretty much have a schedule or someone tells you what to do to having no idea what you're going to do when you wake up in the morning. I think the best piece of advice I got was to eat the frog, which means do the hardest thing first in the morning. Whether that was being really creative in writing a story or pitching someone, which was always nerve-wracking, doing that first. That was always really important.
Great, Shelby. Thank you for that and about the anxiety. So I want to ask you the flip side of that question, which is something that I found when I traveled and done something, like you said, unexpected. So here's my question. what was your feeling or your state when you finally got to Indonesia and you got or either off the plane or you arrived at beach and you saw the waves? What describe for our audience the feeling, how you felt like what I'm talking about is not just that you were unchained from your desk, but did you have the feeling of like, yes, I did it, or what was your feeling?
Oh, absolutely. But really, when I saw the waves in Indonesia, I was scared, scared out of my mind. I was going to use profanity, but the waves were bigger than anything I'd ever seen in my home break. They break faster, they're raw, they're powerful, they're in the middle of the ocean. And I was like, oh my God, I just talked myself onto this dream job with all these guys. I'm the only girl. I basically won the lottery ticket. The golden ticket of my dreams is, being in warm water, beautiful waves with a bunch of men. But the waves are huge. So I was scared out of my mind, to be completely honest with you. Yes, there was this feeling of freedom, but then I actually had to do the job, which I just talked myself into, which was writing stories about these guys. And then I had a sense that I needed to be able to actually surf these waves. So the first couple of days, the waves were just giant, and I was like, oh, I'm just a journalist. I'm just here to watch. But when you're on a boat for 10 days, you get pretty bored. So you got to go surf. And I think for me, there was one day where I was so scared. I was trying to catch this one wave. They called it mutz. They referred to it as this like really gentle wave, but it was anything but gentle. And I was so scared. And I was with one of the most famous lifeguard surfers, and he's like, Shelby, you just got to go. Like, think happy thoughts and just commit. And I was so scared, but that really was the metaphor for my life. This perfect triangle of water came to me, and I paddled, and I just said in my head, make it, make it, make it. And eventually I caught this wave. It was so fast, nothing like I'd ever surfed at home. For a nanosecond, the wave went over my head. It's what we call getting barreled. It wasn't like a true barrel, but a surfer barrel. And I dropped in, and that really became kind of the metaphor for a lot of the things that I had to do in life. It's just once you drop in, that anxiety and fear sort of erases. Even if you drop in and you fall, at least you went. So I know I just went off on a big tangent, but yeah, so there was freedom, but then there was like a little bit more anxiety because I had to produce, and I was in a completely foreign
Shelby,
land.
I could tell you're not the first person that has gone out on a limb and said, oh my gosh, what could I have been thinking? So I know the audience could really relate to that.
Thanks. Yeah, a lot of people go out on limbs, and that's the thing is, I thought I was alone. I was a little arrogant as a kid, and I was like, oh, I'm the only one doing this. And I think a lot of people weren't working. Not as many people were working from home in 2009 as they are now, but now tons of people go out on their own and do different things, and so yeah, I mean, there's a lot of people who are really ballsy and doing wonderful things with their life. Just like you guys. I mean, you've got your own business, and you've made the leap.
Well, it sounds to me, Shelby, that you did leap, but you gave a thought. It's not that you took a leap without thinking. Even the decision to leave your job, you gave it some thought. You mulled over your concerns. You had your hesitations, and there was a level of preparation for the change that you made. And even when you described the surfing story, I didn't think it was a tangent at all. It seemed to fit right in. As I listened to you and as I heard it, you were out there, you're doing it, but you were sitting for a while. You were contemplating, you were thinking, you were looking, and then I want to go, but there's that little hesitation. And then, as you said, the fellow said to you, hey, you're here, do it. So again, you had that little balance between a pause and jumping into the deep end.
Absolutely.
But
absolutely.
I did hear, and it makes sense, sure, this is the first time for both things, so it does make sense for the anxiety to be there, but I think you're to be applauded. It's not that the anxiety stopped you, and you said you took care and you took action, when you were feeling depressed. We recently had a guest. He actually was on our first show, and we recently had our 100th episode, and he was back again. And Michael Lozier, and what he said is the purpose of life is to feel good. And that really resonated with me. If you go for that, feel good. So to stay in a job that doesn't fulfill you, doesn't make you happy, doesn't make sense. So you're out there just doing what brings you joy. So that's a fantastic thing.
Thank you. And I think, when you have anxiety and depression, it's really hard to do this when you're in it, but you kind of have to give them a hug. And it sort of transforms it. I mean, anxiety is there for a reason, to keep you from doing something stupid like jumping off a bridge or, surfing a wave that's completely out of what you should be surfing. And some of it's just irrational, and it's rooted in just our genetic makeup, trying to escape saber-toothed tigers or things like that. And depression is there to let us know, like, hey, maybe we need to shift, or maybe we need to just rethink what we're doing right now. And for me, I think surfing's taught me a lot about this, but really sitting with it and giving it a hug and sort of instead of fighting it has been the key. I used to fight anxiety and depression all the time. Don't get me wrong. I'd just go for a run, or I'd do anything I could to not deal with depression. But now if it comes on, and it doesn't come on that much anymore, I just sort of sit with it and kind of give it a metaphorical hug. And that tends to work really well.
And the other key thing that you said, Shelby, which shows your good instincts or your groundedness, is that you seek help and support. Bob and I often talk about that in our shows, how important it is to have social support. And
yeah, you're right. I was really scared to get help, especially for depression. I thought it was really weak. I figured you could just will it away. That's really what I thought, and I think a lot of people think that. I'd have like basically my mom and stepdad come to my house and just be like, "Look, you've got mental illness runs in your family, and you're not talking logically right now. For me to really get help." And I tried all sorts of things. I tried hippie drugs, vitamins I'd buy at the health food store, and I tried tons of yoga, tons of meditation, and I think all that helps. But I ultimately went to a doctor. And now, looking back on it, the things that I did most weren't things that the doctor told me to do, but getting help was really important, especially initially. And so getting help is also really brave. And that's something that I didn't understand at the time.
Well, you seem to understand it now. And Shelby, I know that you've expressed too that gratitude plays a big role in your life. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you apply that in your life?
Yeah, I love gratitude. It's a concept that I really just started using, only a few years ago. But gratitude can really turn any anxiety, depression, or hardship on its head. Whenever anything's hard, I just kind of look at it and I think, wow, I'm really grateful for the adventure of life right now. It's not easy, but I think that's part of the reason why I started my podcast. I interview all these adventurers, and I think about what they're doing. And some of the best, the best adventures aren't ever easy, but we remember them. So I try to inject gratitude into everything in my life. Whether it's a hard person I meet, I realize they're there in my life for a reason, and if they're being difficult, it's usually a reflection of something I don't like in myself that they have. I just am trying to be more aware of that. And then every morning I actually email my mother 3 things I'm grateful for every day. And then she emails me back 3 things she's grateful for every day. And it's just this little routine we've developed pretty recently. And it's actually, it's really improved my relationship with my mother too. So it's a great exercise to do with anybody in your life, whether it's your kid or your husband or your coworker. When you start the day off with gratitude, the rest of the day really transforms.
Well, we're going to pick up that habit. I'm going to suggest to Christine after we get off this call, I'm going to write down 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I know, Shelby, you're in Christine territory big time. You don't know it. So because she expresses gratitude all the time, and she does
awesome.
So many things without asking, without any expectation of any return for all other people for so many people. And so thank you for saying that. I think that the audience, that is a really great suggestion that Shelby gave, that to consider, find someone in your life, whether it's a significant other, a family member, or even imagine how startled a coworker would be, and you go up to them and say, you know what, every day I'm going to come in and I'm going to tell you the 3 things that I'm grateful for, and why don't you do the same? Tell me what you're grateful for. Well, that certainly, at a minimum, would be a conversation starter at the bar.
Yeah, absolutely.
Very definitely.
Wait. Are you for real? They're like, and then that's your opportunity to grab their lapels and draw them in closer and say, listen, none of us know how much time we have, right? And let's live into our authenticity, because none of us know how much time we have. Some people didn't wake up this morning. Duh.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've got to be grateful for what we have. It's really easy to focus on the negative, but when you focus on the positive, it's transformative. My mom does this with clients, with random people. I mean, and it can be anything. It can be a text, it can be an email. If you miss a day, it's not a big deal, but it's a cool habit to start.
Yeah, it is great to have practices like that. So, audience, we will be back in a moment on Learn to Live Stress-Free with our featured guest today, Shelby Stanger.
Hi, I'm Dr. Robert Wright, Jr., the Stress Relief Doctor, co-host of the Learn to Live Stress-Free podcast series. I'm an author, speaker, and stress management wellness coach. My published study is the first to show the connection between stress reduction, grief recovery, nitric oxide spiking, and the relaxation response. And my practical application of this knowledge helps you relieve the stresses of everyday life. I have the tools to dissolve your pain points quickly and effectively. Email me to find out how you can start to feel better now at stressfreenow.info/contact. That's stressfreenow.info/contact. Have you been procrastinating about completing an important project or pursuing a treasured dream? Christine Wright specializes in helping her coaching clients to lay out clear, elegant strategies. She shows you how to quickly build your confidence, to uncover and eliminate your habitual patterns of resistance and self-sabotage. Christine helps you discover those meaningful insights that will get you to do what works so you can celebrate your successes. Go to stressfreenow.info/contact to let Christine know that you're ready to live your ideal life now. Again, that's stressfreenow.info/contact.
Welcome back to Learn to Live Stress-Free as we continue our conversation with Shelby Stanger, our featured guest today.
Shelby, before the break, I want to just congratulate and acknowledge something you said. You talked about your mom, and it sounds like you have a great mom, and I'm sure you agree with that. And so I think, this would be a good time to celebrate all the people who are great moms. A lot of times, not just great moms, great dads, or great nurturers. The person doesn't even have to be biologically related to you, because this ties into what you mentioned about the gratitude, that sometimes it's the off chance remark at the right time that allows us to move forward. So, for example, a person could be considering a promotion in their job, or they could be thinking about taking the exam for a specialized school or something like that, and a person saying something that might undercut them, that stops them and it changes their whole future. Conversely, a person that's supportive and says the right thing at the right time, they're there, you could do it, or of course you could do it, or you're just great, whatever you decide, I'm okay with it. And so having those levels of support, that sounds like you had that from your mom. So I want you to give your mom a hug from us, because she obviously did a good job. And although we've never met your mom, the way that you talk about her, and I know Christine's mom, although she had passed away before I met her, the way, in fact, Christine talked about her mom in the present tense for for many years.
I still do.
She still does talk about her, and and the people that she's been fond of, and sometimes I haven't known that the person was deceased. So I said, wait a minute. So thank you for that, sharing that with our audience. Shelby, you touched on something that I believe you have touched on, a huge issue. And here, I'm going to tell you what I think that issue is. This issue that you raised about resisting getting help, that for some reason, some people think that getting help means that they're weak, or it goes against their sense of self-reliance. And I know I can thinking of a person in particular who, as they got older, their spouse reached down to tie one of their shoelaces that had come loose, and she just was trying to hit him, saying, "Stop it, I'm not an invalid." And his point was that he was trying to keep her from tripping, which she could have easily done with the untied shoelaces. So that's my question to you. Why did you find, or were you believe you were in that space where getting help was hard for you and maybe hard for others?
I don't really know. I think I'm an athlete, and so I've always felt that, I don't know if it's just because I'm an athlete, but I've always felt like doing things on your own is being strong, and I've always valued those traits. But I also, like you said, I had a really good mom who happened to be a social worker and, a therapist. And so I grew up having people around me get help, and it was okay. And, but I don't know. I guess I just kind of had entered this space where I just thought I was really tough and I didn't need to ask for help. It quickly changed though. I didn't stay in that space for very long. I recognized hey, asking for help might just be pretty courageous. But it's interesting. I actually met and interviewed a woman who just wrote a book called Unbound. And this might be a little bit of a tangent, but it's about quitting her job to ski around the world, and on the way she meets this amazing man. Her life was really good before she decided to quit her job, and she actually broke a record while she skied the most vertical feet anybody had ever had at the time in the world. But she said, I think a lot of people wait until they hit their bottom to do something fun and amazing and to do more with their life. And she said, being bored is enough. So I think it's just the courage to ask for help or to make a change. I think those two go kind of hand in hand, and I just had to reshift and realize that asking for help is actually pretty brave. We can't do it alone.
Great. And Shelby, I want to acknowledge that that's a tough question that I asked you. I think that I asked you that question because from time to time, both Christine and I run into people who are amazingly generous and have helped many other people, but when it comes their turn to receive help, they are often rejecting it. And sometimes it surprises me in particular, where I'm saying, wait a minute, I say to the person, but you've helped hundreds of people all through your life. Why wouldn't you be able to accept the same, be a good receiver? And then that look, I think any people in our audience, and Shelby, that look comes back like, what is this guy talking about? And they know exactly what I'm talking about. And so thank you for that. And
to be honest, I think I was really pissed about asking for help. I mean, I was angry and I didn't understand it, and I might be, I have years of reflection. This was 2009 for me, so it's been a long time. But I was pretty angry about asking for help. I didn't want to. I fought it. I tried all sorts of other things, and actually, I have a really great stepdad as well. I didn't want to listen to my mom back then. She said, hey, I think you might want to talk to someone, and really get help. Not just like the hippies you talk to in the surf or whoever I was talking to at the time. And, when my stepdad finally said, hey, Shelby, I think you need help too, I think I listened to him. Sometimes I wasn't that young. I was in my, 20s, but but I just took his advice over my mom. Sometimes it takes another person. And I'm really lucky that I have loving parents that intervened in that way. And I also just recognized my own thoughts one day. I was like, okay, I'm not thinking clearly. So that's pretty much it.
Well, Shelby, you just opened the door to another podcast. We'll have to have you on. This issue of a person that cares about you and loves you has given you advice, and the person's not taking it, and then some stranger just says something, or the person reads a magazine article or a newspaper article, and it says the same exact thing. They go, oh,
exactly.
And then you say to the person, well, how come you're not smiling? I'm finally doing it. Well, I've only been telling you for the last 3 years. You let some stranger, that's okay. And so I think that you've opened the door to something. That's a real thing that people experience, as well as this thing of, like in the book Who Moved My Cheese, where something happens. Here's a quick funny story where I am diverging, where I had pulled the car into the driveway and I had forgotten about it, but I went outside to empty the garbage, to put the garbage out, and I said, darn it, I tell Christine, pull the car up all the way, Well, when I came back inside, I said to Christine, how come you didn't pull the car up all the way? And so this is the issue of blaming somebody when it's not their fault. And so the thing is, she turned and she said to me, she said, Bob, if you recall, you did all the driving today, right? So it ties into not asking for help, and then this whatever part of us that we have this tendency to look outside ourselves to blame someone else. So just like how your mother had been telling you, but you didn't listen to her, but when your stepfather said it, finally you heard it, right?
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I have that experience too, where sometimes like my fiance will tell me something, and then my best friend will tell me the same thing, and I'll listen to her, and he's like, I just said that for years, and now you're listening to her. What the heck? I think that's pretty common in all humans. And that's why they say in marketing you have to hit people 6 times for them to get it in 6 different ways. And I think that's just how we're wired sometimes. But you mentioned something that's really important. And, I really try not to blame anybody else about anything anymore. I think taking responsibility for where you are in life and your decisions is a really, really important thing. And that's something that I've really worked hard on. But you can't let life happen to you. You got to take personal responsibility for things that do happen to you and pivot accordingly.
Great. Shelby, it occurs to me that you've had some amazing travel experiences because you've had the good fortune to travel quite a bit. Where would you say has been the most interesting places that you've visited?
Yeah, I mean, why I quit my job is I wanted to be able to go all over the world, and I talked myself into these awesome trips, and they took a lot of work, but I think the most amazing place I traveled to was probably the Amazon jungle in Peru. It was just completely untrammeled by man, trees bigger than anything I've ever seen at home, and there were wild macaws eating what's called a clay lick, which is just like a big dirt mound of clay, and there was just nothing there except for these wild, beautiful animals. And I was scared to death. We stand-up paddled a portion of the Amazon River in Peru, and the paddle wasn't hard. Like a grandma could probably do the paddle. It was downriver and easy. But just because we didn't know what was underneath us was incredibly terrifying. But the animals we did see were just, they have these, I don't know what they're called, but they had basically these creatures that were like this. They were basically like rats or mouse or whatever they were, but they were like the size of dogs. Everything is just Amazonian in the Amazon.
Oh, it's a type of wild boar, probably.
Yeah, I don't know. I forget what it's called. It's like a mole or it's kind of like a groundhog, but it was just giant. And I'm sorry, I'm drawing a blank. And then the macaws. Macaws are just these wild birds. So like imagine just tons of parrots flying in the sky overhead, all of these colors. It was stunning. And completely remote, and the people there were so nice, especially some of the most indigenous people. And we actually, whenever I go to a town that's rural or in the jungle, I played soccer growing up in college, and kids in pretty much every other country but America love playing soccer. So I always just try to play soccer with the locals, and that was a highlight. But meeting the medicine man in the village was also a highlight. He gave me some funny potions that didn't really do anything, but were fun to try out.
Don't tell him that.
Shelby,
I didn't do any like ayahuasca or anything crazy. I took like
okay.
It's called sangre de gato. They use it on cuts, and it was easy. He did offer me something else he was like, "Oh, this is like Viagra," and I was like, "No, thanks, I don't need it." But I appreciate it. It's pretty funny.
Great. Shelby, I understand that you also had another unique travel experience, that you worked as a journalist on a punk rock tour. Could you tell our audience about that?
Yeah, when I was 22 years old, I had actually graduated from college a little bit early, and I'd met some people at Vans, the shoe company, and they'd offered me a job in PR, but I was still in college. I kept in touch, and when I graduated, I called them, and there was an opening for the Vans Warped Tour to be the reporter. I literally got in my car, drove up that day, talked myself into this position, and it was amazing. I went for 60 days in 60 different cities around the country and in Canada. There's about 50 to 60 bands that play a day. It's the longest running music tour in the history of music tours, and I mean, it's punk rock music, so I learned a ton. One thing I learned that really stood out was some of the scariest looking guys with the craziest mohawks and the most intimidating tattoos are literally the nicest people on earth. So never judge a book by its cover. That was pretty telling. And then, I had to learn to be really resourceful, because this was pre-Wi-Fi, and my job was to send 2 stories daily through wireless, or through an internet connection that was dial-up. And just finding a phone, most of the Warped Tours are held at dirt parking lots of amphitheaters. So finding a phone line was really, really challenging. I sometimes begged, the most non-axe murdering looking like teenager to take me to his house or to take me to a nearby Kinko's, and I'd send my stories at a Kinko's when I could, because they had faster speeds. And then I'd give him like a backstage pass. So it was awesome. And the Van Dorn family who started Vans, they were on the tour bus with me, Steve Van Dorn and his daughter Christy, and they were just so cool. And the guy who started the Vans Warped Tour, his name is Kevin Lyman. I learned so much from them. I also learned I don't really love punk rock music. Like when I hear it, I kind of get pretty excited because it reminds me of being on the punk rock music tour, and it was really fun at 22, and I love dancing around in the mosh pit and getting in it. But I don't know, that's probably not my first choice of music. Slamming punk rock.
You learned that too. So
all
that
day.
Was
so I did learn that
you
too.
Learned.
Yeah.
Now, Shelby, with all your travels, but it occurs to me that you have a very strong sense of self and security. Traveling alone as a woman, I would imagine, brings certain concerns to the table. And just even going from place to place, knowing the customs, what to say, what not to say, what to do, what not to do. What are the things that you need to do to prepare yourself, or what does a woman need to be aware of if she's traveling alone?
Yeah, I'm lucky. I haven't run into, knock on wood, too many scary situations, but I'm really aware. I'm really careful of what time I travel during the day. I dress pretty normally, conservatively. I don't put myself in unsafe situations. I think having a friend, having a flashlight, if you're in a dark village, is always really important. Trying to travel not alone is really good. But yeah, I'm really aware, and I'm really careful. So I've been lucky that way. And even when I go running, I'm really aware. I like to run on trails alone by myself, but I try to do it on the weekends or when there's other people on the trail.
Right, and I know so many people. I remember one of my jobs, a woman there, and she was very self-reliant, and this was back before everyone had their personal phone, and she said she used to go for long drives. But however, on one of her long drives, her car broke down and she was nowhere
Mm.
near a phone. And after that experience, she said she always lets someone know where she's going.
Yeah, that's really important. I mean, as a kid, I was really dumb. I'd go surfing at night, and I did all sorts of stupid things. But I guess I got lucky, and now I'm just really careful. Like, life is really beautiful and short, and putting yourself in a dumb situation is silly. It's never worth it. So I've said no to situations that have been really fun because I didn't feel safe. I think one of the biggest things is, and it's really hard in today's society, is, on business, I've been in situations where someone I'm with is drunk, and saying no to getting in their car is really, really hard. But I mean, that's the difference of life and death. So I've just, I mean, good thing now we have Uber. There's so many ways to get home if someone around you is your only ride is drunk, or I think that's like a really important one. It's not always just being alone in the woods. It's sometimes being with your best friend who's intoxicated and shouldn't be driving.
That makes sense. The idea of having an alternative is a very good idea, and that's part of being prepared, that if in your mind you have, if this happens, then I do this, having your set of personal standards and really owning them so that you just go to them automatically, that in the moment that it doesn't get hard and you don't get swept up into doing something that is unsafe and or not in your best interest. That makes a lot of sense.
And when you're in another country, being drunk is like, you have to be careful. I've definitely been on an island and probably drank too much and got myself in a bad situation. So I think, now I really limit, I just don't put myself in bad situations. I don't try to be debaucherous. And one thing I really try to do is I'm really respectful of whatever culture I'm with, saying thank you, bringing them a present, just being respectful of their culture. If you're surfing, it's, you don't take, you wait to take your waves. That's always been really important in travels. And I've been lucky. A lot of people have taught me these things over the years, and I've learned them.
Well, that makes a lot of sense. And Shelby, we want to thank you for sharing your adventures with us and your story. We really appreciate it. And Bob and I enjoyed having you as a guest on our show today.
Well, thank you so much. I've loved being on it, and I love this show, so I really appreciate it.
Okay, thank you. And I'd like you to take this time to let our audience know how they can reach you, and I believe you have something to offer also.
Yeah, I mean, I'm really easy to find. I'm all over social media at Shelby Stanger, or if you go to wildideasworthliving.com, that's my latest project. It's a podcast, and you can find me, Shelby, at wildideasworthliving.com. It's a new project that I've started. It's been really fun. It's a wild adventure in itself, and it's really taking off. So that's probably the best way. I help people with different things, mostly in the media field, but you can still reach me, Shelby, at wildideasworthliving.com if you need help with storytelling, or if you just want to listen to a fun new podcast. For those who listen to the show and just want a quick reminder, I'll do a PDF of 3 things to live more wildly and stress-free now. You can go to wildideasworthliving.com/stress-free now, and it'll be PDF with just 3 quick things you can do to start living wildly and stress-free now. A lot of the things we already talked about.
Okay, great. Thank you so much. So, audience, check out Shelby on her podcast site, wildideasworthliving.com, and she is on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, so she is all over social media, and you'll be able to get your wild ideas with Shelby Stanger.
Great.
Awesome.
Shelby, since there are people who are not just on Facebook but especially Twitter, can you just give your Twitter handle for the people that because Twitter is pretty much instantaneous. Can you give us our audience your Twitter handle?
Just to preface, Twitter is probably my least favorite social media. I'm not very active on it, but at Get Wild Ideas, and then on Instagram it's Wild Ideas Worth Living. You can also find me at Shelby Stanger, and then Facebook is Wild Ideas Worth Living. That's the Facebook page. The PDF of 3 things to live more wildly and stress-free now. You can go to wildideasworthliving.com / stress-free now.
Okay, great. Okay, great. Thank you so much for that, Shelby. So, Shelby, we've enjoyed you today. What final thought or key idea would you like to leave with our audience today?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, life is a series of decisions. I'd say embrace it, love it, have gratitude, and enjoy. I mean, everybody I meet has a great story. So don't let life happen to you. You can choose to have an awesome life and, have gratitude.
Great. Thank you for that. So, audience, I want to thank you for listening, and I want to thank Shelby again for being our featured guest today. Shelby, you've just been amazing, and I know our audience really appreciates the advice and the wisdom that you've shared from your lived experience, and that's great. So, audience, I want to thank you for listening. In whatever time zone you're in right now, we know that our show reaches far and wide, and we appreciate your presence and trust that you'll benefit in some unique way from the information that Shelby has delivered to you today. As always, we welcome and look forward to receiving your comments about our show. Please let us know if there are any additional topics you'd like to see us cover, or if you'd like us to have a guest like Shelby who you enjoy come back on the show. Please contact us through our website with your feedback and suggestions. Remember, listeners, if you'd like to experience the same benefits our coaching clients get with us, including learning how you can get more results in your day and easy ways to dissolve your chronic pain, stress, or anxiety, then give us a call at 954-900-2179. Mention that you heard our Stress Free Now podcast show, and you will receive a free gift from us. Call or email us today to schedule your free consultation. For Christine Wright, this is Dr. Robert Wright, Jr. of StressFreeNow.info. Until next time, be safe and be well.